Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars change. The ship had just completed its first jump through hyperspace, and now they were somewhere no human had ever been before. The view screen showed distant suns and planets that belonged to alien civilizations. "Captain, we're picking up signals," said Lieutenant Chen from the communication station. "Multiple sources. They're definitely artificial." Elena nodded. After 50 years of listening to alien radio transmissions from Earth, humanity had finally built a ship capable of reaching the stars. The Defiance was humanity's first real starship, equipped with weapons, shields, and a faster-than-light drive that Earth's best scientists had worked decades to create. "Any response to our arrival?" Elena asked. "Not yet. But something's happening. The signal patterns are changing. It's like they know we're here." Elena wasn't surprised. The alien transmissions Earth had intercepted suggested a highly organized galactic civilization. What surprised her was how long it was taking them to respond. On Earth, any unknown spacecraft would be detected and contacted within minutes. "Captain," called out Commander Torres from the tactical station. "Sensors are picking up movement. Multiple ships heading our way." "How many?" "3 large vessels. They're not moving fast, but their energy signatures are massive. Much bigger than anything we could build." Elena felt her heart rate increase, but kept her voice calm. "Battle stations, but do not charge weapons unless I give the order. We're here to make contact, not start a war." The bridge crew moved efficiently to their positions. The Defiance might be humanity's first starship, but its crew had trained for years for this moment. They knew their ship inside and out, every system and every capability. "Incoming transmission," Chen announced. "Audio and visual, put it on screen." The main viewer flickered and showed a being unlike anything in Earth's databases. It had gray skin, 4 arms, and eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. When it spoke, the words came through the universal translator Earth's scientists had built based on the intercepted signals. "Unknown vessel. You have entered space controlled by the hegemony. State your origin and purpose." Elena stepped forward. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Defiance. We come from the planet Earth in the Sol system. We're here to establish contact with galactic civilization." The alien's expression didn't change. "Earth is not in our databases. You will maintain your current position while we conduct an assessment. Do not activate any weapons or attempt to leave this area. We understand. We're willing to cooperate." The transmission ended, and Elena turned to her crew. "Thoughts?" "They seem organized," said Torres. "Very formal, like they've done this before." "The ships approaching us are maintaining a defensive formation," added Chen. "They're not acting hostile, but they're definitely being careful." Elena studied the tactical display. The 3 alien ships had taken positions around the Defiance, not close enough to attack immediately, but near enough to respond quickly if needed. It was a professional formation, the kind used by experienced military forces. Hours passed before the aliens contacted them again. This time, the being on the screen was different, with blue skin and a more elaborate uniform. "I am Ambassador Thek Var of the Coordination Council. We will now begin your species integration assessment. Prepare to receive a delegation." "We welcome your delegation," Elena replied. "We're eager to learn about galactic civilization. You will be assigned a sector appropriate to your development level and resource requirements. The process is standard and has maintained galactic peace for over 10,000 years." Elena felt a small warning in the back of her mind. Something about the way the ambassador spoke suggested this wasn't really a negotiation. "We appreciate your system, but we'd like to discuss what options are available." "There are no options. The Equilibrium Protocol ensures that all species receive appropriate territory and resources. Deviation from assigned sectors leads to conflict, which is not permitted." The transmission ended before Elena could respond. She looked around the bridge at her crew's confused faces. "Did he just tell us we don't get to choose where we can go?" asked Torres. That's what it sounded like, Elena replied. Lieutenant Chen, review everything we know about their transmissions. Look for any mention of this equilibrium protocol. While Chen worked, Elena studied the tactical display. The alien ships hadn't moved, but sensors showed they were conducting detailed scans of the Defiance. Their technology was clearly advanced, but something felt wrong about their approach. Captain, I found references to the protocol, Chen announced. It appears to be a system where conflicts between species are resolved through ritual combat between small fleets. The winner gets the disputed resources, but casualties are kept minimal. Ritual combat. Elena frowned. That doesn't sound like an efficient way to handle disputes. There's more. According to these transmissions, no major wars have occurred in the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They seem very proud of this fact. Elena walked to the viewport and looked out at the alien ships. 10,000 years of peace was impressive, but something bothered her about it. On Earth, peace came through strength, diplomacy, and the ability to defend yourself. These aliens seem to have achieved peace by making conflict itself impossible through elaborate rules. Captain, the alien delegation is requesting permission to board, Torres announced. Grant permission. Have security escort them to Conference Room 1, but keep weapons holstered unless they show hostile intent. Elena made her way to the conference room, thinking about what she'd learned. The galaxy was organized under something called the hegemony, led by a coordination council that had maintained peace for millennia through strict control of territory and resources. It sounded stable, but it also sounded rigid. The alien delegation consisted of 3 beings, each from a different species. Ambassador Thekvar led them, followed by what appeared to be a scientist and a military officer. They moved with careful precision, as if every step was planned. Welcome aboard the Defiance, Elena said as they entered the conference room. We're honored to meet representatives of galactic civilization. Your ship is unusual, Thekvar replied, taking a seat. Our scans show design patterns we do not recognize. Where did you acquire this technology? We built it ourselves. Earth's scientists and engineers worked for decades to develop faster-than-light travel. The 3 aliens exchanged glances. The scientist leaned forward and spoke in a language Elena's translator couldn't handle. Thekvar responded in the same language before turning back to Elena. You claim to have developed this technology independently? That's correct. We've been working on it since we first detected signals from galactic civilization. That is not possible, the military officer said. All space-capable species receive technology transfers after proper integration. Independent development is inefficient and dangerous. Elena felt her patience starting to wear thin. Dangerous how? Uncontrolled technological development leads to weapons that can destabilize entire sectors. The hegemony has prevented such disasters through careful oversight of all species advancement. And what if a species doesn't want oversight? The 3 aliens stared at her in silence. Finally, Thekvar spoke. All species want peace. The alternative is unthinkable. Elena looked at their faces and realized these beings had never considered that someone might choose independence over security. They had built a galaxy-wide civilization based on the idea that safety was more important than freedom. We appreciate your offer, Elena said carefully. But humanity will need to discuss this among ourselves before making any commitments. There are no commitments to make, Thekvar replied. Assessment is complete. You will be provided with coordinates for your assigned sector. The delegation left without another word, and Elena returned to the bridge feeling troubled. The galaxy these aliens had built was peaceful, but it was also controlled. Every species had its place, its role, its limitations. Captain, Torres called out. The alien ships are powering up weapons. Elena looked at the tactical display and saw energy signatures building on all 3 vessels. They weren't targeting the Defiance yet, but they were clearly preparing for something. Shields up. Charge weapons, but keep them powered down. And get me a line to Earth." As the Defiance prepared for whatever came next, Elena realized that humanity's entry into galactic civilization was going to be more complicated than anyone had imagined. The assessment meeting was supposed to be routine. Ambassador Thek Var had conducted hundreds of them over his long career, guiding new species through their integration into galactic civilization. Every species followed the same pattern. Initial confusion, followed by gratitude for the stability and peace the hegemony provided. But Captain Vasquez was different. She asked questions that made no sense. "Why would you limit conflict to ritual combat?" she had asked when he explained the Equilibrium Protocol. "What if the real threat comes from outside the galaxy? How do you prepare for that?" Thekvar had explained that external threats were theoretical. The galaxy was vast, and the hegemony controlled all space-capable species within it. There were no external threats because there was nothing external to threaten them. "But that's not how threats work," Vasquez had replied. "You don't prepare for the threats you know about. You prepare for the ones you can't imagine." Now, as Thekvar sat in his quarters aboard the hegemony vessel Concordance, he reviewed the recordings of their conversations. Every answer this human captain gave revealed thinking patterns that didn't fit established models. When shown the resource allocation system that had prevented galactic war for millennia, she had pointed out mathematical errors that supposedly made the system inefficient. When offered humanity's designated sector, a small group of planets suitable for their development level, she had politely refused. No species had ever refused their assignment. The sector boundaries were scientifically calculated to provide adequate resources while preventing expansion that could lead to conflict. "The planets you've chosen don't have enough agricultural potential to support Earth's population growth," Vasquez had explained. "We need better worlds, or the resources to make these worlds better." "Population growth beyond assigned limits is prohibited," Thekvar had replied. "All species maintain stable populations appropriate to their allocated resources." Who decided what's appropriate? That question had stopped Thekvar cold. The Coordination Council had made those decisions based on careful calculations and 10,000 years of experience. The system worked because it prevented the chaotic expansion that had led to the ancient wars. But when he tried to explain this to Captain Vasquez, she had asked another impossible question. "What if your calculations are wrong?" The captain's comm unit chimed, interrupting his thoughts. "Ambassador, the human ship is requesting permission to conduct a demonstration of their defensive systems. They claim it's necessary for the integration assessment." Thekvar frowned. Standard procedure called for passive scans only. Active demonstrations were unnecessary and potentially dangerous. But the humans had been cooperative so far, and understanding their capabilities was important for proper sector assignment. "Permission granted. Maintain safe distance and monitor all systems." He made his way to the bridge of the Concordance, where Captain Velthor was coordinating the assessment. 3 hegemony ships surrounded the human vessel at standard formation, distance, their sensors recording every detail of the primitive craft. "Begin demonstration," Captain Velthor transmitted to the Defiance. What happened next changed everything. The human ship's shields activated, but not in any pattern the hegemony had ever seen. Instead of a static energy barrier, the shields seemed to move and adapt, shifting frequency and density in real time. When the Concordance's sensors attempted their standard penetration protocols, the shields adjusted to block them. "That's not possible," whispered the sensor operator. "Their shields are reacting to our scans as if they know what we're trying to do." But the demonstration was just beginning. The Defiance's weapon systems came online, and again the energy signatures made no sense. Human weapons didn't follow standard power curves or targeting algorithms. They seemed designed to be unpredictable, adapting their output based on target characteristics rather than following preset patterns. "Ambassador, Captain Velthor said quietly. This technology shouldn't work. Their power distribution is completely inefficient by our standards, but somehow they're achieving better results than our systems. Thekvar watched the displays in growing alarm. Everything about the human ship violated principles that the hegemony had followed for thousands of years. Their reactor output was impossible according to established physics. Their weapon systems should have destabilized their own ship. Their adaptive shielding required computing power that should have overloaded their primitive systems. Run a full analysis, he ordered. I want to know how they're doing this. The analysis took 3 hours and revealed something terrifying. The humans hadn't just developed different technology. They had discovered principles that the hegemony had deliberately abandoned because they were considered too dangerous. Ancient records spoke of civilizations that had pursued adaptive technologies during the Great Wars, ships that could modify themselves in battle, weapons that learned from each engagement, shields that evolved to counter new threats. Such technologies had made the ancient wars so devastating that the survivors had sworn never to develop them again. But these humans had no knowledge of the ancient wars. They had developed their technology in isolation, unbound by the fears and limitations that shaped galactic civilization. To them, adaptive systems weren't dangerous. They were just good engineering. Ambassador, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Coordination Council. The main screen showed Elder Keth Moore, the most senior member of the council. His expression was grave. Ambassador Thekvar, preliminary reports from your assessment have reached us. Is it true that this species has developed self-modifying technology? Yes, Elder. Their ship systems adapt and learn in real time. It's unlike anything in our databases. Such technology led to the devastation of the ancient wars. It cannot be permitted to spread. Thekvar felt his heart sink. He knew what that meant. Elder, the humans seem peaceful. Perhaps we can guide them away from dangerous applications. Negative. The risk is too great. Enforcement Fleet 7 is being dispatched to contain the contamination. You are to prevent the human vessel from leaving the assessment area until our forces arrive. The transmission ended, and Thekvar stared at the tactical display. 3 hegemony ships against 1 human vessel. Under normal circumstances, the outcome would be certain, but these weren't normal circumstances. Captain Velthor, power weapons, and inform the humans that they are now under protective custody pending arrival of additional forces. Sir, the humans are requesting an explanation for our change in posture. Thekvar looked at the image of Captain Vasquez on the screen. She appeared calm, but her eyes were alert and calculating. Inform them that additional assessment is required. Captain, the tactical officer called out, the human ship is moving. On the display, the Defiance was slowly rotating to face the Concordance. Its weapons weren't powered, but its shields were strengthening. Captain Vasquez, Thekvar transmitted, return to your previous position immediately. Ambassador, with respect, we haven't been told we're prisoners. If we're free to go, we'd like to return to our home system. You are not prisoners. You are being protected while we ensure your technology doesn't pose a threat to galactic peace. There was a long pause before Vasquez replied. Ambassador, we've been listening to your transmissions for 50 years. We know about your peace and we respect it. But we won't be caged because you're afraid of our technology. Captain, you don't understand the dangers. Your adaptive systems could destabilize the entire galactic order. Then maybe the galactic order needs to be more stable. Thekvar felt a chill run through him. The human captain had just suggested that the system that had maintained peace for 10,000 years was flawed. Captain Velthor, the human ship, is charging weapons. On the screen, the Defiance's energy output was spiking in ways that made no sense. Their weapons were powering up, but they were also doing something else. Their entire ship was reconfiguring itself, systems adapting and changing in real time. This is your final warning, Thekvar transmitted. Power down all systems and prepare to be escorted to a secure facility. Captain Vasquez's response was calm and clear. Ambassador, we came here in peace, and we've cooperated with your assessment, but we won't surrender our freedom because you're afraid of change. The first shot came from the Concordance when Captain Velthor interpreted the Defiance's adaptive reconfiguration as preparation for attack. It was a standard disabling shot designed to overload the primitive human shields. Instead, the human shields absorbed the energy and used it to strengthen themselves. The battle that followed lasted 12 minutes and changed the galaxy forever. The Defiance didn't just survive the engagement with 3 superior vessels. It won, using tactics that made no sense but proved devastatingly effective. When Enforcement Fleet 7 arrived 6 hours later, they found the Concordance and its escorts disabled but intact, their crews alive but their ship's systems completely shut down. The Defiance was gone, leaving only a message. "We came seeking friendship," Captain Vasquez had transmitted. "We found fear. When you're ready to meet us as equals instead of subjects, we'll be waiting." The news spread through the galaxy faster than the Coordination Council could contain it. A single human ship had defeated 3 hegemony vessels using technology that shouldn't exist. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone had challenged the established order and won. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, engineer Kala Sen stared at the intercepted transmission data. The human ship's power signatures were impossible according to everything she had learned in engineering school. Their adaptive shields violated fundamental principles that every student memorized in their first year. But the data didn't lie. The humans had done the impossible. "The equations are wrong," she whispered to her colleague, Engineer Drestal. "Look at these power distribution patterns. We've been told this configuration would cause catastrophic system failure, but their ship not only survived, it performed better than our designs." Drestal looked nervous. "Kala, you can't say things like that. The technical standards have kept our ships safe for millennia." "Safe, yes. But what if they've also kept us limited?" Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in laboratories, engineering bays, and research facilities. Scientists who had spent their careers following established formulas suddenly found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. On the border world of Theta Station, Captain Zara of the merchant vessel Far Trader made a decision that would change her life. For years, she had accepted the trade route restrictions that kept her ship confined to predetermined paths between approved systems. But if a primitive human ship could ignore hegemony fleet positioning, why couldn't she ignore trade regulations? She powered up her ship's engines and set course for the contested zone, a region that had been off-limits for 3,000 years due to resource allocation protocols. If the humans were right, if the old rules were just rules and not natural laws, then maybe it was time to see what lay beyond the boundaries. The Coordination Council met in emergency session as reports flooded in from across hegemony space. The human ship, now identified as the UES Defiance, had disappeared into uncharted space after disabling 3 of their best vessels. But the real crisis wasn't the humans themselves. It was what their victory had triggered. Elder Kethmore stood before the assembled council, his ancient features grave. "In the past 72 hours, we have received reports of unauthorized research, illegal territorial incursions, and open questioning of established protocols from 47 different sectors." Elder Sith Nara, representing the Military Coordination Division, added her concerns. 6 separate species have attempted to reverse engineer human technology based on sensor data from the encounter. The Shenhai Collective has already modified one of their ships with adaptive shielding. "With what result?" asked Elder Morvek. "The modification was successful. Their ship's defensive capabilities have increased by 300%. A shocked silence filled the council chamber. The Shenhai were known for their conservative approach to technology. If they were willing to experiment with human innovations, the contamination was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. "How is this possible?" Elder Vexcal demanded. "Our scientists have proven that adaptive systems are inherently unstable." "Perhaps," Elder Kethmore said slowly, "our scientists were wrong." Meanwhile, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiance as it drifted in the void between star systems. The ship's adaptive systems had been continuously refining themselves since the encounter with the Hegemony fleet, improving efficiency and capability with each passing hour. "Captain, we're intercepting a lot of chatter from Hegemony space," reported Lieutenant Chen. "It sounds like our little demonstration has caused quite a stir." "What kind of stir?" "Multiple species are questioning hegemony protocols. Some are conducting unauthorized research. And there are reports of ships leaving their assigned sectors without permission." Elena felt a weight settle on her shoulders. They had come to the stars seeking contact with galactic civilization, not to destabilize it. But the more she learned about the hegemony system, the more she understood why their presence was causing such upheaval. "Commander Torres, what's our status on the analysis of hegemony technology?" "Complete, Captain. And it's eye-opening. Their ships are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly limited. Every system follows rigid parameters that prevent adaptation or improvement. It's like they deliberately designed their technology to never change. Why would they do that? Based on the historical data we recovered, it appears they were trying to prevent the kind of technological arms race that led to something called the Ancient Wars. But in doing so, they created a galactic civilization that can't grow or adapt." Elena studied the star charts on the main screen. Somewhere out there, entire species were questioning everything they had been taught about what was possible. The implications were staggering. "Captain," Chen announced. "Incoming transmission from an unknown source." "Put it through." The screen showed a being Elena didn't recognize, with green skin and multiple eyes arranged around its head. When it spoke, the words came through with obvious excitement. "Human ship, this is Captain Nexar of the Thraxi vessel Starseeker. We have been monitoring hegemony communications about your encounter. We wish to make contact. This is Captain Vasquez. We're willing to talk, but I should warn you that the hegemony considers us dangerous. The hegemony considers many things dangerous. Independent thought, for example. We have spent 300 years following their trade routes and resource allocations while our home worlds struggle with scarcity. Your victory has shown us that their rules are not laws of nature. What do you want from us? Knowledge, cooperation, a chance to build something better than the sterile peace the hegemony has imposed." Elena looked around her bridge at her crew's faces. They had come to the stars to join galactic civilization, but instead they were helping to tear it apart. Or maybe they were helping to rebuild it into something better. "Captain Nexar, transmit. Your coordinates. We'll meet and discuss this properly." Over the following days, more ships appeared at the rendezvous point. The Thraxi Starseeker was joined by vessels from 6 other species, all of them refugees from the rigid order of hegemony space. Their captains told similar stories of frustration, with limits and restrictions that served no purpose except to maintain the status quo. But the real revelation came when Elena shared the Defiance's technical specifications with the assembled captains. The principles behind human adaptive technology weren't as complex as they seemed. Any species capable of space travel could implement similar systems with the right knowledge. The key, Elena explained during a joint briefing, is to design systems that can learn and adapt rather than just follow programmed responses. Your ships are already sophisticated enough to handle the computing requirements. You just need to stop limiting yourselves. Captain Nexar was the first to implement the modifications. Within hours, his ship's efficiency had improved by 40%. Others quickly followed, and soon the small fleet was operating with capabilities that exceeded anything in hegemony space, but their activities hadn't gone unnoticed. Hegemony reconnaissance drones had tracked their location, and a significant fleet was en route to contain what the Coordination Council was now calling the corruption. 12 ships, reported Commander Torres after analyzing sensor data. Heavy, cruisers with escort vessels. They'll be here in 6 hours. Elena looked at the tactical display. The ships under her unofficial command now numbered 8, all of them modified with adaptive technology, but they were still outnumbered and facing vessels designed specifically for combat. All ships. This is Captain Vasquez. Hegemony forces are approaching with obvious hostile intent. We have 2 choices: surrender and submit to whatever they have planned, or fight for the right to exist on our own terms. The responses came quickly from all 7 ships. No one wanted to surrender. Then we fight, Elena announced. But we fight smart. Their ships follow rigid tactical doctrines. Ours can adapt. Use that advantage. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Hegemony fleet arrived expecting to face a small group of rebel ships using stolen technology. Instead, they found vessels that fought like living things, adapting their tactics and capabilities in real time. The adaptive fleets didn't try to match the Hegemony ship's firepower. Instead, they used speed, unpredictability, and coordinated tactics that changed too quickly for the rigid Hegemony systems to counter. Within 2 hours, 6 Hegemony ships had been disabled, and the rest were in full retreat. The victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Not only had the humans proven that Hegemony technology could be surpassed, but they had shared that knowledge with others. The infection was spreading, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. On worlds throughout Hegemony space, scientists and engineers began conducting experiments that had been forbidden for millennia. Trade ships left their assigned routes to explore regions that had been declared off-limits. Military commanders questioned orders that made no tactical sense. The careful order that had maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years was coming apart, and no one knew what would take its place. The declaration came through every communication channel in the galaxy simultaneously. Elder Kethmore's image appeared on screens across thousands of worlds, his ancient voice carrying absolute authority. Citizens of the Hegemony, a corruption has spread through our peaceful civilization. The species known as humans have introduced dangerous technologies that threaten the stability that has protected us for 10,000 years. Effective immediately, any ship or world harboring human contamination will be cleansed. The order will be restored. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the transmission from the bridge of the Defiance, surrounded by the small fleet of ships that had allied with humanity. 8 vessels against the entire Hegemony. The odds would have been laughable if the consequences weren't so serious. Captain, Commander Torres reported grimly, long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements throughout Hegemony space. They're mobilizing everything. How much time do we have? The nearest response fleet will reach us in 18 hours. But Elena, it's not just one fleet. They're coordinating a galaxy-wide operation. Elena studied the tactical displays showing the approaching storm. Hundreds of Hegemony ships were converging on known rebel positions. This wasn't just about stopping the humans anymore. The Coordination Council was trying to eliminate every trace of the ideas humanity had brought to the galaxy. Get me a channel. To all ships, Elena ordered. When the connection was established, she addressed the captains who had chosen to stand with humanity. You've all seen the Hegemony's declaration. They're not offering surrender terms or negotiation. They're planning to destroy anyone who's been contaminated by contact with us. Captain Nexar of the Thraxi vessel spoke first. My people have suffered under Hegemony resource restrictions for 3 centuries. Even if we surrender now, they'll never trust us again. We fight. The other captains echoed his sentiment. They had tasted freedom and growth, and none of them were willing to return to the stagnant safety of Hegemony rule. Then we need to be smart about this, Elena continued. We can't win a conventional war against the entire galaxy, but we don't need to. We just need to survive long enough for the ideas to spread. She was right. Throughout Hegemony space, the declaration of war had backfired spectacularly. Instead of rallying citizens to defend the established order, it had revealed the true nature of their peaceful civilization. Peace maintained through the threat of annihilation wasn't peace at all. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, engineer Kayla Sen watched hegemony security forces seize her laboratory. Her crime had been conducting unauthorized research into adaptive technology. As they destroyed months of work, she realized that the system she had served her entire life was built on fear, not wisdom. "This is wrong," she told her colleague, Drestal, as they were escorted away. "We were trying to improve our civilization, not destroy it." "The Council knows what's best," Drestal replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Scientists were arrested for asking questions. Engineers were detained for suggesting improvements to established designs. Ship captains were relieved of command for expressing interest in human tactics. But for every person silenced, 10 more began to question why such extreme measures were necessary. If the hegemony's way was truly superior, why did they need to crush all alternatives? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Defiance's chief science officer, had been analyzing the historical data they had recovered from hegemony systems. What she found changed everything. "Captain, you need to see this," she called Elena to the science lab. "I've been studying the records of the ancient wars, trying to understand why the hegemony is so afraid of adaptive technology." "What did you find?" "The wars weren't caused by adaptive technology. They were caused by the lack of it." Sarah brought up a holographic display showing galactic history. 10,000 years ago, the galaxy was dominated by rigid, hierarchical civilizations. When conflicts arose, they couldn't adapt quickly enough to end them efficiently. Wars dragged on for centuries because neither side could evolve better strategies. Elena stared at the data. "So the hegemony has it backwards." "Completely. They've spent 10 millennia preventing the very innovations that could have prevented the ancient catastrophe. Their system doesn't preserve peace through stability. It preserves the conditions that made the ancient wars so destructive." This revelation reached the rebel fleet at the same time as troubling news from across the galaxy. The hegemony's military response wasn't just targeting ships that had adopted human technology. They were systematically destroying any research facility, any ship, any world that had shown interest in change. The Thraxi Federation was the first to openly rebel. When hegemony forces arrived to recalibrate their research facilities, they found the entire Federation fleet waiting for them. The battle was brief but decisive. Ships equipped with adaptive technology proved superior to vessels limited by rigid doctrine, but the Thraxi victory came at a cost. The hegemony responded by declaring the entire Federation a contamination zone and began systematic bombardment of Thraxi worlds. "They're not trying to restore order," Captain Nexar transmitted to the Defiance, his ship fleeing the destruction of his home system. "They're trying to eliminate anyone who might remember that change is possible." Elena felt sick as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Coordination Council's response to the human contamination was genocide on a galactic scale. Entire species were being wiped out for the crime of thinking differently. "Captain," Torres announced urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown fleet. They're requesting immediate contact." "Put them through." The screen showed a being Elena had never seen before, with crystalline skin that reflected light in strange patterns. When it spoke, the words carried desperation. "Human ship. This is Admiral Krex of the Borderlands Coalition. We are fleeing hegemony space with 47 ships and 2 million refugees. The Council has declared our entire region contaminated. We need sanctuary." "How far behind are hegemony forces?" 6 hours, maybe less." Elena looked at her tactical display. The Defiance and its 7 allied ships couldn't protect a refugee fleet of that size, but they couldn't abandon them either. "Transmit your coordinates. We'll rendezvous and figure out our next move." What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The small, human-led fleet became the nucleus of a growing resistance. Movement, as more and more ships fled hegemony persecution. But it wasn't an organized rebellion. It was a chaotic exodus of anyone who refused to accept that the old ways were the only ways. The hegemony's response grew increasingly desperate. Their fleets, designed for maintaining order through overwhelming force, found themselves unable to adapt to the fluid tactics of the resistance. Ships that could modify their capabilities in real time proved nearly impossible to defeat using conventional strategies. But the real damage wasn't being done in space battles. It was happening in the minds of ordinary citizens throughout hegemony space. Every act of suppression, every world bombarded for the crime of independent thought, every scientist arrested for asking questions revealed the true nature of the system they lived under. On the capital world of the hegemony, Elder Keth Moore watched his carefully ordered galaxy tear itself apart. What had started as a simple contamination had become a full-scale civil war, and his forces were losing. "The humans have destroyed everything we built," he told the emergency session of the Coordination Council. 10,000 years of peace, gone because we allowed them to survive. "Perhaps," Elder Sith Nara said quietly, "our peace was never as strong as we believed." The other elders stared at her in shock. Sith Nara had been one of the most conservative voices on the council for centuries. "The reports from our military commanders are clear," she continued. "Our forces are failing, not because human technology is superior, but because our forces cannot adapt when their rigid doctrines prove inadequate. We have created a civilization that is strong in theory, but fragile in practice." "What are you suggesting?" Keth Moore demanded. "I'm suggesting that the humans have revealed a fundamental flaw in our system. We have achieved stability by suppressing growth. But in doing so, we have made ourselves vulnerable to anyone who chose a different path." The debate that followed lasted for days, while the galaxy burned around them. Some elders called for even more extreme measures to crush the rebellion. Others began to question whether the rebellion might be justified, but the decision was taken out of their hands when the Defiance and its growing fleet appeared in the capital system itself. Elena Vasquez's message was simple and direct. "People of the galaxy, you have a choice. You can continue to live under a system that destroys anyone who dares to grow, or you can choose to build something better. We're not here to conquer or rule. We're here to prove that change is possible." The response was immediate. Ships began defecting from the hegemony fleet, their crews unwilling to fire on vessels offering hope instead of demanding submission. Planetary governments declared independence rather than continue participating in galactic genocide. Within hours, the capital system itself was in open revolt. 6 months after the collapse of the Coordination Council, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Starport Unity, the first truly international space station built by the new Galactic Alliance. Through the massive viewports, she could see ships from dozens of species working together on construction projects that would have been impossible under the old hegemony system. The transition hadn't been smooth. When 10,000 years of rigid order collapsed in a matter of weeks, chaos was inevitable. Some sectors had descended into conflict as species settled old grievances that the hegemony had suppressed rather than resolved. Other regions had simply gone dark, their populations choosing isolation over the uncertainty of change. But in many parts of the galaxy, something beautiful was emerging. Species that had been kept separate by artificial boundaries were discovering the benefits of voluntary cooperation. Technologies that had been forbidden were being developed and shared freely. Worlds that had been declared unsuitable for development were being transformed by techniques the hegemony had never allowed. "Captain," Commander Torres approached, carrying a data pad with the latest reports. "The colony survey is complete. New Terra is officially ready for settlement," Elena smiled. New Terra was humanity's first permanent extrasolar colony, built on a world that the hegemony had designated as marginally habitable and therefore off-limits. Using adaptive technology and cooperation from their new allies, human engineers had transformed it into a garden world capable of supporting millions. "What's the status of the other colonies?" The Thraxi have established 3 new settlements in systems the hegemony had restricted. The Borderlands Coalition has begun mining operations in the old Forbidden Zones and found resource deposits that could support a dozen civilizations. Even some of the former hegemony species are requesting permission to establish new colonies. Elena nodded. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same species that had once enforced hegemony restrictions were now benefiting from their removal. Fear of change had blinded them to opportunities that had existed all along. Any word from the remaining hegemony holdouts? The core worlds are still maintaining their isolationist stance. Elder Keth Moore's faction controls about 12 systems, mostly in the galactic center. They've declared their territory a preservation zone and refuse all contact with the outside galaxy. Are they a threat? Not militarily. Their forces are technologically inferior and getting more so every day. But they're broadcasting propaganda about the chaos and destruction we've supposedly brought to the galaxy. Elena walked to the viewport and looked out at the bustling construction activity. It was chaotic, certainly. Ships designed by different species using different technologies worked side by side, often requiring creative solutions when their systems didn't integrate perfectly. But it was productive chaos, the kind that came from growth rather than destruction. Captain Vasquez? A voice behind her spoke with the distinctive harmonic overtones of a crystalline species. Elena turned to see Admiral Krex, whose refugee fleet had been among the first to join the Alliance. Admiral, how are the integration protocols working out? Better than expected. We've completed the first successful merger of human adaptive technology with crystalline quantum systems. The result is a hybrid design that performs 30% better than either system alone. This was the real revolution that humanity had brought to the galaxy. Not just new technology, but a new way of thinking about technology. Instead of rigid adherence to established principles, the Alliance encouraged experimentation and innovation. Instead of keeping species separate to prevent conflict, they brought them together to create solutions none could achieve alone. There's something else, Admiral Krex continued. We've received a message from Earth. They want to know when you're coming home. Elena had been wondering about that herself. The Defiance was humanity's first starship, and she was technically still on a mission for Earth's government. But the galaxy had changed so much since her departure that returning to Earth felt like stepping backward. What did you tell them? That you're busy building something that will benefit every human who ever dreams of reaching the stars. Elena smiled. That was diplomatically put, but accurate. The new Galactic Alliance wasn't just about the species that had overthrown the hegemony. It was about creating a framework where any civilization could grow and develop according to its own nature, without artificial limitations imposed by fear. Captain, Torres announced from the communications station. Incoming transmission from the Science Council. They're ready to present their findings about long-term galactic stability. Elena made her way to the conference room where representatives from the Alliance's member species had gathered. Dr. Sarah Chen was leading the presentation, her holographic displays showing complex calculations about galactic development patterns. The analysis is complete, Sarah began. We've modeled the long-term effects of the changes we've implemented, and the results are encouraging. Instead of the rigid stability the hegemony maintained through suppression, we're seeing what we call dynamic equilibrium. The display showed 2 galaxy models side by side. The first depicted the old hegemony system, with neat boundaries and fixed resource allocations that never changed. The second showed the new alliance structure, with fluid boundaries and constantly shifting patterns of cooperation and development. The hegemony model was stable but fragile, Sarah explained. Any significant disruption would have caused catastrophic collapse because the system couldn't adapt. Our model is more volatile in the short term, but much more resilient over time, because it can absorb and integrate changes rather than being destroyed by them. Captain Nexar of the Thraxi asked the obvious question. What about conflicts? The hegemony system prevented wars. Actually, it didn't, Sarah replied. It suppressed. conflicts until they became so severe that they exploded into devastating wars. We're seeing more frequent but much smaller disputes, which are resolved through negotiation and adaptation rather than escalating into galactic catastrophes. Elena studied the projections. The new system wasn't perfect. There would always be species that preferred isolation, always be conflicts that couldn't be resolved peacefully, always be challenges that required difficult choices. But it was a system based on growth and opportunity rather than fear and limitation. "What about the humans?" asked Admiral Krex. "What's their role in this new galaxy?" Elena had been thinking about that question for months. Humanity had inadvertently triggered the collapse of the old order, but they hadn't planned it and weren't equipped to rule the galaxy that emerged from the chaos. "We're catalysts," she said finally. "We showed that change was possible, but every species has to choose their own path. Our job is to keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep proving that there's always a better way if you're willing to look for it." The meeting continued for hours, covering everything from trade protocols to defense agreements to research sharing arrangements. The new Galactic Alliance was more complex than the old hegemony, requiring constant negotiation and adaptation, but it was also more flexible and more resilient. As the representatives filed out, Elena remained behind with Sarah and Torres, looking at the star charts that showed the current state of the galaxy. Green markers indicated alliance members. Blue showed independent but friendly systems. Red marked the hegemony holdouts and a few hostile territories. Gray represented unexplored space. "You know what I find most interesting?" Sarah said, pointing to the gray areas. "Under the hegemony, exploration beyond designated boundaries was forbidden. Now we have dozens of expeditions mapping previously unknown regions. We're discovering new worlds, new phenomena, even new forms of life." Elena nodded. The hegemony had created an artificial scarcity by declaring vast regions of space off-limits. Removing those restrictions had revealed resources and opportunities that could support galactic civilization for millennia. "Captain," Torres said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. I've been offered command of the new exploration fleet. They want me to lead the deep space missions." Elena felt a moment of sadness, but it was quickly replaced by pride. "That's wonderful, Marcus. You've earned it." "It means leaving the Defiance." The Defiance was built to explore, having her crew spread throughout the galaxy, carrying human knowledge and human principles to new worlds. Seems appropriate. Elena was right. The crew of humanity's first starship had become teachers and leaders throughout the Alliance. Lieutenant Chen now headed the Communications Integration Project. Dr. Sarah ran the Science Council. Even the junior officers had found positions where their experience with adaptive systems and innovative thinking was valued. "What about you, Captain?" Sarah asked. "Any plans for the future?" Elena looked out at the stars and felt the same sense of wonder that had driven her to volunteer for humanity's first interstellar mission. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and opportunities that no one had even imagined when the Defiance first left Earth orbit. "I think it's time to go home," she said. "Earth deserves to know what we've accomplished out here. And there are probably a few billion humans who'd like the chance to reach for the stars themselves."